My name is Layla Al-Harith. I was 32 years old when my life ended, and strangely, it was also the moment my real life began. I was born into Saudi royalty, into a palace of white marble floors that reflected chandeliers like frozen stars above my head. From the outside, my life looked perfect. Servants bowed when I entered rooms. My father was respected, feared, powerful. My mother wore diamonds that sparkled like they carried their own light. But inside those palace walls, there was no freedom, only obedience. From the time I could speak, I was taught one truth. Islam was not just our religion, it was our identity, our protection, our survival. I remember being 5 years old, sitting cross-legged on a silk carpet as my Quran teacher watched me with cold, watchful eyes, and his long finger traced the page as he commanded me to repeat each word perfectly. When I made a mistake, his voice became sharp. "Again," he said. I repeated the words, even though I did not understand them. I learned early that understanding was not required, only submission. Fear entered my heart before love ever did. I was taught that Allah watched everything, every thought, every mistake, every doubt, and that punishment was always near for those who strayed. As I grew older, my life became smaller, more controlled. I wore modest gowns that hid my shape. I covered my hair carefully. I lowered my gaze whenever men entered the room. I learned how to smile in silence and agree without question. I became the daughter my father expected, the princess the world admired. But deep inside me, there was always a quiet emptiness, and a hollow space that no prayer seemed to fill. At night, when the palace was silent and the air was heavy with stillness, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt so alone even when surrounded by everything money could buy. I never told anyone, because princesses were not allowed to feel lost. They were not allowed to question. They were not allowed to break. If you are watching this now, and you have ever felt trapped inside a life you did not choose, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment, and share it. Because someone out there may be suffocating in silence, just as I was. I was 26 years old when I married Khalid. He was everything my family approved of. A respected Islamic scholar, intelligent, disciplined, devoted. But he was also kind in a way I had never experienced before. And he never raised his voice. He never spoke to me like I was beneath him. When he looked at me, he saw me, not my title, not my duty, but me. At first, I did not know what to do with that kind of gentleness. Our marriage had been arranged, just like everything else in my life. But slowly, something unexpected began to grow between us. Trust. And inside that trust, something fragile and unfamiliar began to awaken inside my heart. Hope. For the first time, I wondered if my life could be more than obedience and fear. I never imagined that the man who showed me kindness would become the man whose death would shatter my world, and whose faith would lead me to a truth that would cost me everything. At first, the change in Khalid was so small, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. He still led prayers when required, and he still quoted the Quran with precision. He still carried himself like the respected scholar my father admired. But something in his eyes had shifted. There was a softness there that had not existed before, a quiet distance during moments that once stirred passion in him. I noticed it one evening as we stood side by side for Maghrib prayer. His voice trembled slightly as he recited, not from fear, not from emotion, but from hesitation. Afterward, he remained seated on the prayer rug long after I had folded mine away. "Are you unwell?" I asked gently. He looked at me, and for a moment it felt as though he was standing at the edge of a cliff, deciding whether to jump. "Layla," he said softly, Have you ever wondered if we were taught everything? The question sent a chill through me. Wondering was dangerous. Questioning was rebellion. And astaghfirullah, I whispered. Be careful what you say. He nodded, but he did not look afraid. He looked relieved. The days that followed became heavier. He spent more time alone. I would wake at night and find his side of the bed empty. Once, I followed the faint glow of light into his study. The door was slightly open. I saw him sitting at his desk, his phone in his hands. His face was illuminated by the screen. I stepped closer, my heart pounding, and the word on the screen made my breath stop. Bible. My body went cold. Khalid, I whispered sharply. He turned, startled, but not ashamed. I expected panic. Instead, I saw peace. I was going to tell you, he said quietly. Tell me what? My voice was trembling now. He took a slow breath. I had a dream. I felt anger rise in my chest. Dreams are nothing, I snapped. But he shook his head. This was different. I saw Isa, Jesus, but not as a prophet. He was radiant, Layla, alive. He called my name. He said, come to me. My stomach twisted. This was blasphemy. This was apostasy. This was death. You must repent, I said urgently. Delete this. Forget it. If my father finds out. He reached for my hands, and I noticed they were steady. Layla, I have never felt this kind of peace in my life. Not once. Not in all my years of study. Peace. The word echoed in my mind. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and I saw something undeniable. He was not confused. He was not rebellious. He was transformed. And beneath my fear, beneath the training drilled into me since childhood, a dangerous thought flickered in my heart. Why does he look freer than I have ever felt? And I did not know then that his confession was the beginning of the end, or that the peace on his face would soon cost him his life. The night they came for him, the palace was silent. The air felt heavier than usual, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I was asleep when I heard the first sound. A hard knock, not polite, not respectful, demanding. My eyes opened instantly. Khalid was already awake beside me. He had heard it too. We looked at each other, and in that moment, neither of us spoke, but we both understood. This was not a visit. This was judgment. The knocking came again, louder this time, followed by voices, male voices, authoritative, cold. My heart began to race. Stay here, Khalid whispered. But I grabbed his arm. No, I said, my voice trembling. Don't leave me. Before he could answer, the bedroom door burst open. 3 men entered first, dressed in white thobes, their faces hard and emotionless. Behind them stood the sheikh my father trusted most, and behind him, my father. I had never seen his face like that before. There was no warmth, no hesitation, only resolve. Khalid al-Sayyid, the sheikh said firmly, you are accused of apostasy. The word struck me like a physical blow. Apostasy. Death. No, I cried immediately. This is a mistake. He has done nothing wrong. My father did not look at me. His eyes remained fixed on Khalid. You have betrayed Allah, he said. Khalid stood slowly. His movements were calm. Too calm. I have found the truth, he replied quietly. My father's jaw tightened. The guards moved forward. I threw myself between them and Khalid. Please, I begged. He is your son-in-law. And he is family. One of the guards grabbed my arm and pulled me away. His grip was iron. Khalid did not resist as they seized him. He did not fight. He did not plead. He simply looked at me. And in his eyes, I saw no fear, only sadness and something else. Love. Layla, he said softly, do not be afraid. But I was afraid, more afraid than I had ever been in my life. They began dragging him toward the door. I screamed, struggling against the guard's grip. "Father, please," I cried. "Don't do this." Finally, my father looked at me. His expression was cold, distant. "Honor must be preserved," he said. The words felt like knives. Khalid disappeared through the doorway, his white robe trailing behind him like a ghost fading into darkness. And then he was gone. The room fell silent. The silence screamed louder than any voice. And my knees collapsed beneath me. I fell to the floor, unable to breathe. My husband was gone, taken not by strangers, but by my own blood. And deep in my soul, I knew something worse was coming. Because in our world, apostasy was not forgiven. It was erased. And I did not yet know that they would soon ask me to prove my loyalty. They brought him back 3 days later. 3 days that felt like 3 lifetimes. I had not slept. I had not eaten. Every second stretched endlessly as I waited, prayed, begged Allah to undo what had been done. But deep inside, there was a growing silence where faith used to live. When the guards entered my father's private chamber and ordered me to come, my legs felt weak beneath me. I already knew. Something inside me already understood that whatever waited behind those doors would destroy me. And the room was dimly lit. Heavy curtains blocked the sunlight. My father stood near the far wall, his hands behind his back. The sheikh stood beside him, his face calm, almost peaceful. And in the center of the room, on his knees, was Khalid. I barely recognized him. His face was bruised, his lips split, dried blood staining his collar. His shoulders were slumped from exhaustion, but his eyes were alive. When he saw me, something changed in his expression. Not fear, not shame, relief. "Layla," he whispered. My heart shattered. I tried to run to him, but one of the guards blocked my path. "Please," I cried, looking at my father. "Please, he has suffered enough." My father said nothing. The sheikh stepped forward slowly. In his hand was a gun, black, heavy, final. He held it out toward me. "Take it," he said. I stared at it, and confused, terrified. "No," I whispered. He moved closer, pressing it into my trembling hands. The metal was cold against my skin. It felt alive with evil. "If you love Allah," the sheikh said calmly, "you will prove your loyalty." My stomach turned. My mind refused to understand. "No," I said again, shaking my head. "I cannot." My father's voice came next, cold, absolute. "You will." Tears blurred my vision. I looked at Khalid. He was watching me, his expression filled with compassion. Compassion for me, not for himself. "Layla," he said gently, "it's all right." All right? Nothing was all right. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the weapon. "I'm sorry," I sobbed. "I'm so sorry." He smiled. Even then, he smiled. "Jesus loves you, Layla," he whispered. The words pierced deeper than any blade. Jesus loves you. And not Allah judges you, not obey or die. Love. My finger trembled against the trigger. My vision darkened. My soul screamed inside me to stop, to run, to refuse. But my father's presence behind me was suffocating. The weight of my entire life pressed down on my shoulders. Obedience, honor, fear. I closed my eyes, and the gun fired. The sound exploded through the room, deafening, final. I opened my eyes. Khalid's body collapsed onto the floor. His eyes were still open, still peaceful, but empty. A sound escaped my throat, something between a scream and a sob. The gun fell from my hands. In that moment, something inside me died with him. Not my body, not my breath, my soul. After that day, time lost its meaning. The palace continued as if nothing had happened. Servants still walked the halls in silence, and my father still held meetings behind closed doors. The call to prayer still echoed through the air 5 times a day. But inside me, everything had stopped. I could still hear the gunshot. It replayed in my mind over and over, louder each time. I saw Khalid's face every time I closed my eyes, his final smile, his final words. "Jesus loves you, Layla." I stopped sleeping. When I did sleep, the nightmares came. I would see him standing in front of me, whole and alive, his eyes filled with peace. I would reach for him, but before I could touch him, he would fall again, blood spreading across his chest, and I would wake up screaming. I stopped eating. Food tasted like dust in my mouth. My body grew weaker, but the pain inside me remained sharp. Everyone told me I had done the right thing. "You preserved honor," my father said once. And his voice carried pride. His approval felt like poison. I began to pray more, desperate to silence the guilt. I recited every verse I had memorized since childhood. I bowed until my forehead ached against the floor. But the more I prayed, the more empty I felt. Allah felt distant, silent, cold. I remembered Khalid's eyes in his final moments. He had not looked afraid. He had not begged for mercy. He had not cursed me. He had forgiven me. How could a man facing death have more peace than I had ever known in life? The question haunted me. It followed me everywhere. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, I sat alone in Khalid's old study. His belongings had been left untouched, as if erasing him completely would require erasing every trace of his existence. My hands trembled as I sat in his chair. I could almost feel his presence, and I looked at the desk where I had once seen the forbidden word, Bible. My heart pounded. Even thinking about it felt dangerous. Apostasy did not die with him. It lingered like a shadow, waiting. Slowly, I reached for my phone. My fingers hesitated above the screen. Fear whispered in my mind, "This is haram. This is betrayal. This is death." But something deeper, something stronger, pushed me forward. I typed the word he had died believing, Bible. The screen filled with results, verses, images, words that had been forbidden my entire life. My chest tightened as I opened it. I did not know what I was looking for. Answers, peace, him. My eyes fell on a single verse. "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Rest. The word broke something inside me. Because I was weary, I was drowning. And for the first time since Khalid died, I wondered if the peace he found had been real. I began reading in secret, always at night, always with the door locked and the lights dimmed. My heart would pound at the smallest sound in the hallway, terrified that someone would discover what I was doing. Apostasy had already taken my husband. I knew what it could take from me. But the words on the screen kept pulling me back. I started with the Injil, the gospel. I expected anger. I expected threats. I expected commands wrapped in fear. Instead, I found something I did not recognize. Mercy. I read about Jesus speaking to sinners, touching the unclean, forgiving the guilty. I read, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son." Loved. The word felt foreign, almost dangerous. Allah demanded submission, but this God gave, this God loved. And I would read slowly, sometimes whispering the verses aloud, as if testing how they felt in my mouth. They did not taste like fear. They tasted like water to someone dying of thirst. Weeks passed like this. My grief did not disappear, but it began to change shape. Instead of crushing me, it softened me. I found myself speaking quietly into the darkness at night. Not formal Arabic recitations, not memorized prayers, just broken words. "If you are real," I whispered once, tears sliding down my face. "Why did this happen? Why did he have to die?" There was no thunder, No voice from heaven, only silence. But it was not the cold silence I had always known. It felt patient, waiting. One night, after hours of reading, exhaustion overcame me. My phone slipped from my hand as I lay on the bed, tears still wet on my cheeks. And then I dreamed. And I was standing in a vast desert. The sky above me was dark, heavy with clouds. I was alone, barefoot, the sand burning beneath my feet. In the distance, I saw a figure. At first, I thought it was a mirage. But as he walked closer, the darkness around him began to fade. Light surrounded him, not blinding, but warm, gentle. My heart knew before my mind did. Jesus. He stopped a few steps away from me. His eyes were unlike anything I had ever seen. Not judgment, not disappointment, compassion, deep and endless. "Layla," he said. My name on his lips sounded like it belonged there. I fell to my knees in the sand. "I killed him," I cried. I pulled the trigger. My voice broke. Shame flooded me. I expected condemnation. Instead, he stepped closer. "I know," he said softly, "and I still love you." Love. Not because I was innocent, and not because I was obedient, but despite everything. The desert wind grew quiet. The burning sand cooled beneath my knees. Peace filled the air around us. "Come to me," he said gently. "You are not beyond redemption." I woke up suddenly, my heart pounding, tears streaming down my face. The room was dark, silent, but something inside me had changed forever. I was no longer searching. I had been found, and I knew, with a certainty that frightened and comforted me at the same time, that I could never go back to the life I once knew. After that dream, nothing around me changed, but everything inside me did. The palace was still the same prison of marble and silence. The call to prayer still echoed through the halls. My father still walked with the authority of a man who believed he controlled every soul beneath his roof. But inside my heart, and something new had taken root, something alive. I no longer recited the prayers with the same conviction. My lips moved, but my spirit resisted. Each time I bowed my head toward Mecca, I saw the face of Jesus in my mind. Not angry, not demanding, patient, waiting. It terrified me. Not because he threatened me, but because he did not. I began to notice how fear had ruled my entire life. Fear of punishment, fear of shame, fear of dishonor. But this new presence inside me did not feel like fear. It felt like freedom. And freedom was dangerous. My father began watching me more closely. I could feel it in the way his eyes lingered on me during meals, in the way his voice sharpened when he spoke my name. He knew something was different. One evening, he called me into his private chamber, the same room where Khalid had died. And my chest tightened as I stepped inside. The memory lived in the walls. "You have been distant," he said without looking at me. "You do not pray with the same devotion." I lowered my eyes, careful, cautious. "I am grieving," I replied softly. He studied me for a long moment. "Grief must not weaken faith," he said coldly. Faith. The word felt fragile now. Not because I had lost faith, but because I had found it somewhere else. The sheikh began visiting more often after that. His presence made my skin crawl. His eyes watched me the way a hunter watches wounded prey, waiting, measuring, testing. I knew what he suspected. Apostasy did not die easily. It spread, quietly, like fire beneath the surface. At night, I continued reading the Bible in secret. Each word strengthened something inside me. I read, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Free. I whispered the word to myself, afraid and hopeful at the same time. I knew what this truth had cost Khalid. I knew what it could cost me. Everything, my family, my name, my life. Some nights, fear wrapped around my throat so tightly I could barely breathe. I wondered if I was strong enough. I wondered if I was foolish. But then I would remember his voice in the desert. Layla, not princess, not daughter, not possession. Layla, seen, known, loved. For the first time in my life, my identity did not belong to my father. It did not belong to tradition. It belonged to him. I stopped asking for permission inside my own soul. I stopped pretending. Even in silence, my heart had already chosen. And I knew the day was coming when that choice would no longer remain hidden. The day my father confronted me, and I felt a calm I did not recognize. The palace walls felt tighter than ever, the air heavier, as if the entire house was holding its breath. He stood in the grand hall, his eyes sharper than knives, voice low but laced with anger. "Layla," he said, "have you betrayed us too?" My heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to bow, to lower my eyes, to hide, to obey. But something stronger had grown inside me. I lifted my gaze. For the first time, I met his eyes without fear. "No, Father," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "I have not betrayed you. I have found peace, true peace." His face contorted, a mixture of rage and confusion. "Peace? After what you have done? After what your husband did?" I swallowed, feeling my throat tighten. "He did not die in vain," I said softly. "He died believing in Jesus, and I have chosen him too." Silence fell. The words hung in the air, heavy, sharp. I expected shouting, punishment, rejection. Instead, I saw something shift in my father, something I had never seen before. Fear. Not fear of me, but fear of losing control. The authority he had wielded over my life suddenly felt brittle, fragile. He opened his mouth, closed it, and turned away. My mother appeared at the doorway, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. She did not speak. She could not. I realized in that moment that the power of fear, the chains of tradition and control, had no hold on my soul anymore. I had already been freed. My father's anger could not touch the part of me that had been touched by love, by Jesus. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks, but they were not of fear. They were of relief, and my body shook with the weight of what I had just declared. But my spirit was light, soaring. I had faced the man whose approval I had always sought, and I had told the truth. And in telling the truth, I discovered something profound. No matter what consequences came next, I belonged to God, not to any human authority. The silence stretched on, oppressive yet liberating. I knew that I could never return to the life I had known, not the life of obedience, of fear, of golden cages. I had chosen truth. I had chosen Jesus. And even as my father's shadow loomed over me, it could no longer dominate me. I had been reborn in a way the palace could not understand, and that was enough. I lost everything. My title, my family's approval, the life I had been born into. The palace no longer felt like home, and the halls that once echoed with luxury now reminded me of chains I had finally broken. Yet in that loss, I found something I had never known. Peace. Freedom. The kind of freedom that no wealth or status could ever buy. I no longer lived for appearances. I no longer bowed under fear. Each morning, I woke with a heart lighter than it had ever been, carrying a new identity not given by men, but by God. I remembered Khalid's eyes, calm even in death, and I understood at last the depth of his faith. He had not died defeated. He had died victorious. The nightmares that had plagued me since that night slowly began to fade. I could sleep again. My body healed, but more importantly, my soul did. I spent hours in prayer, but not the prayers I had memorized since childhood. These were prayers of honesty, and of raw conversation with the one who had found me in my deepest despair. I read the Bible openly now, studying the words that had saved my husband and had begun saving me. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," I whispered one afternoon, tears filling my eyes. It was as though, for the first time in my life, someone was tending to my heart, carrying the weight that had crushed me for decades. I began meeting others who had chosen Christ in secret, finding a spiritual family that loved me not for my title or obedience, but for the soul that had been reborn. We shared stories, prayed together, and celebrated life without fear. Sometimes, when I walk alone in the desert beyond the city, I remember the silence of that night, the weight of the gun in my hands, the eyes of my father, the peace in Khalid's final gaze. And in those moments, I whisper to Jesus, thanking him for his patience, for his mercy, for his love that reached me when I was broken, afraid, and alone. I have been restored, not to the life I had lost, but to the life I was always meant to live. I am no longer a princess of marble and gold. I am a daughter of the King of Kings. Every scar, every tear, every moment of fear has led me to this place of peace. My story is not one of shame or defeat. It is one of redemption, of resurrection, of a love that surpasses all understanding. And if you are watching this, I want you to know that no matter how deep your despair, no matter how impossible your circumstances, the same Jesus who found me can find you. He is patient, he is kind, and his arms are always open. I have lived through the darkness and emerged into his light, and in him I am finally free.